Meditation, a word that is so common now everyone knows it. It used to be much more esoteric, but now it's dinner table conversation. There are so many varieties, teachers, practices, books, and promises. Let's simplify it for a moment so it doesn't seem too daunting. Meditation is essentially learning to be quiet with ourselves. Meditation is learning to sit quietly without moving away from whatever is happening inside of us, whatever inner torment might be going on. This inner torment will always take the form of a thought or a series of thoughts, which we can refer to as a story, whether it be about a pain in our body or a relationship in our life. Meditation is taking a look, maybe for the first time, at our relationship to thought. Which stories have the most power over us? Which ones take the bulk of our attention? And which ones cause us to suffer? In essence, it's an extremely simple practice, and that's exactly what makes it so challenging. Can you sit down by yourself in silence and stay there for 30 minutes? What a learning experience it is. What an incredibly difficult learning experience it is. And what an incredibly uncomfortable learning experience it is. At first, we want nothing more than to move away from these thoughts, from these stories, from ourselves. I'd rather not look, thank you. Where's my phone? I first learned to meditate in Tucson while working on a writing project with a friend of mine. I was 30 years old and had just come to the realization that my addiction to thought was the root of my problems. My friend introduced me to a Tibetan Buddhist teacher who was offering a beginner's class. I was excited to begin the journey into my mind, but nothing could prepare me for how difficult and slow the progress would be. The teacher started us with a very simple practice. Sit down, close your eyes, and count 10 breaths in a row. Easy enough, right? For the first few weeks of daily practice, I couldn't make it past 2 before losing my way and becoming utterly lost in the mind, swept away by a story, generally some worry about my health, which was the strongest mind pattern at the time. It was remarkable. I had every intention of counting to 10, but within a few breaths each time, I would slip away into the mind. This was shocking to me and clearly showed me the nature of my mind, how erratic it was, how unfocused it was, how addicted I was to these stories of worry. They seemed so important, so real, so necessary to focus on and figure out. Otherwise, how would I ever solve them? How would I ever find peace if I didn't find the solutions to these problems? At least that was my belief at the time, the notion that peace could only be had by solving the problems of my life. I had no ability at that point to resist the temptation to follow each and every story that arose. This was the first great teaching of meditation. My mind had become my master. Meditation trains us in the art of letting go, and what greater gift is there than that? Whichever method we take on, whichever practice we fall for, because, like anything, it does take falling in love with meditation to really give it juice, that practice will teach us to let go. Let's use a very simple practice as an example. If we put our attention on our breath during meditation, in essence, we have let go of the rest of our lives in that moment. All we know is our breath if our attention is steady. Then, inevitably, thought arises and pulls us off our breath, and the rest of our lives arise in the form of stories. This would be called going unconscious in meditation parlance. We have let our attention slip away from the intended object of attention, breath, and into the realm of thinking. Once we realize it, a moment of grace, I would suggest, we shift our attention back to the breath, and in the process let go of our inner world of thinking. And so it goes. Over time, we find we're able to keep our attention steady on whatever we wish, and the temptation of thought has less and less sway over us. Sounds easy, right? As far as I'm concerned, this is the single greatest challenge a human faces, to let go of our addiction to thinking. But if what you want more than anything is inner peace and freedom, a necessary endeavor. I have met many spiritual seekers in my life, and I'm always surprised to hear from the ones that don't have a meditation practice. I understand it isn't easy for anybody, and even harder for some, especially those that suffer from some kind of attention deficit disorder. And yet it seems like an absolutely necessary and foundational practice. If we're genuinely interested in understanding ourselves as deeply as possible, we have to be willing to sit quietly and notice what's going on inside. It takes sustained viewing to get a lay of the land, the mind being what it is. Meditation of one form or another lies at the heart of all great mystical traditions, and for good reason. I mention this not to judge anyone, but to simply encourage you to try again if you don't currently have a practice. The going is tough at the outset, there's no way to sugarcoat that, but the fruits are truly worth the effort. In essence, meditation is the simplest thing. It's almost like the school teacher telling you, stop talking, go sit in the corner, and be quiet. Quiet. That seems to be the hardest thing for us. It's easy to feel discouraged and shameful at first. Why can't I stop paying attention to my thoughts? You're not alone in that. I remember having that thought countless times. Everybody's in the same boat. If you think you don't have anything in common with someone, you can be sure you have that in common with them. It would be quite a dinner party icebreaker if you met someone for the first time and said, "Are you having trouble not paying attention to your thoughts too?" If we're lucky, we come to find that there's nothing lovelier than being quiet with ourselves, and that the deep reservoir of stillness within us is like a paradise. What we're looking for is the simple inner world of stillness, not the complicated inner world of stories. I think it's important to mention, too, that not everybody knows how to go inside. It sounds simple, and some people have more of a predilection for it than others, but not everybody knows how to. This is where meditation shines. We can just stumble and fumble along, working to find our way as long as necessary, provided we have determination and a good teacher. Eventually, we learn how to go in. We learn how to get quiet and just fall into ourselves. Then there comes the idea of needing to go deeper all the time. Am I deep enough? Can I go deeper? There's no end to deeper. So instead, we let go of the need to go deeper and instead find ourselves deeply present. Having let go of everything, we find ourselves alert and awake now, which has a quality of depth because we're in the heart of the unknown. It's about stillness, not depth. To this day, one of the most remarkable experiences in life for me is when I'm completely consumed by a difficult story in meditation, wrestling with it as if my life depended on finding a solution to the issue. And then all of a sudden, pop, I'm out. The story stops, and I find myself quiet and free. What had just a moment before seemed like a wholly real and indelible problem has vanished in thin air. A moment before, I was 100% certain that this issue needed solving now, and to have it vanish in an instant is a remarkable experience that has no parallel and is not to be missed. I'm not big on complicated techniques. I lean more towards the simplicity of the Zen practice of Zazen, which is essentially sitting quietly and noticing what is. But more than anything, I become a listener when I meditate. One of my favorite spiritual teachers, Jean Klein, had a great term, global listening. In essence, it means to listen to life with your entire being, not with just your ears, but with all of you. So I sit quietly and listen to everything with everything. Effortless awareness. There are many wonderful meditation techniques available, so find one that suits you. Find a technique that makes sense to you and that you can commit to. Carlos Castaneda said a wonderful thing. As long as the path has heart, it's a good one. I think in very general terms, we can look to follow that advice. It's certainly a good barometer to start with. And once you find your way, dig deep. My first therapist, Weaver, a Jungian and Ramakrishna devotee, gave me advice at 30 years old that I never forgot. If you want to find water, don't dig 1,000 shallow holes. Dig one hole and go deep. Find a path with heart and go deep. Here's a powerful little exercise that I use sometimes. During your next meditation session, if you find yourself hopelessly lost in a difficult story, rather than struggling to drop your interest in it, which seems downright impossible sometimes, snap your eyes open suddenly instead. It's like waking up, and it breaks the spell of the story instantly. You find yourself simply alert and aware. Try then to stay in that state of alert consciousness as long as you can. It will develop that feeling in you that, oh, I can just let go and I'm still here. My world hasn't collapsed because I let go of that story. The story is gone, and here you are, better than fine. You're free in that moment. It's truly like waking up, and it gives you a chance to reset. I wouldn't use it all the time, but it's an interesting tool to play with. This may be perfectly obvious, but it bears mentioning anyway. Meditation is not a quick fix, and we do ourselves a disservice if we approach it that way. As a matter of fact, meditation begins to steer us away from fixing ourselves and towards letting go, the direction of peace. It requires an extraordinary amount of patience and persistence, and if we approach it with the wrong attitude, chances are we won't sustain it. I know in my case, I turned to it out of necessity to save my life, which may sound dramatic, but had you lived with my mind 30 years ago, you'd understand. And then I learned to love it. Now I turn to it out of joy as opposed to asking it what it can do for me. In my opinion, it's essential to have a teacher. It's a difficult road and good to have someone holding us accountable. When it comes to working with the mind, it's important to trust someone who's been down that path before, someone who understands the pitfalls and the doorways through. As the chaotic energies and their byproducts, stories, begin to settle down inside of us, we find ourselves naturally present. The mind's desire for this moment to be different falls away, and we find ourselves effortlessly present with a quiet mind and an open heart. We start to recognize ourselves as this open presence, simple, natural, now.